This is the Pam Sowder Podcast. With over 2 decades of field and corporate experience and voted one of the most influential women in direct selling, Pam helps mesh the daily needs of distributors to everyday life challenges. It's time to get over yourself, fire up your productivity, work less, and live more. Learn the self-limiting hashtag F-bombs holding you back, fear, frustration, and failures, and turn those F-bombs into friendships, fun, and freedom. Ready? Let's get this party started.
Okay, it's the year 1994, and Big Daddy and I were having a conversation about what was going on in our lives, and our children at the time, Adam was 10 and Kay 7, and I had been a stay-at-home mom at that time for 7 years, and he started using the job word. You know, he's the one in the family that is always thinking about the future, and I'm just out here living in the present, enjoying my life immensely. Not that he's not enjoying his, he's just the one in the family that's always thinking ahead. And he said, you know, before you know it, these kids are going to be driving, they're going to need car insurance, and then they're going to go to college. And, you know, we want to be able to give them the same opportunities our parents gave us. And he started thinking about the lack of money that was in the house. You know, he was working as hard as he could, pretty much 50, 60 hours a week in sales, and I'm at home with the kids, raising them, and this was the summer, and we were having a blast, and I loved being home with them. Now, prior to that, I was in sales. I got out of college in 1979 with a degree in business education, and during my student teaching, I realized the second day in that I needed to grow up a little bit. I needed to be more mature. The kids were my size. I was teaching 11th and 12th graders, and I just didn't feel like I had the capacity to do that. So I ended up, in the 80s, IBM started selling their personal computers, and it was just a great time to be a part of that new frontier, that new knowledge. And I ended up selling computers and loved it. Sold all over my hometown of Roanoke, Virginia, and just making excellent money. And then Adam came along, and when Adam came along, my whole world turned upside down. I no longer enjoyed working. I didn't like dropping him off to school. And I just felt that it just wasn't worth the tears that I shed every morning. But Dave and I had just bought a new house, and we had the responsibility of that payment. I needed a new car, which at that time we couldn't afford. Adam was just a baby, and we knew that at that moment I could not quit work. He had just taken a new job. So I suffered through it for 3.5 years. Then Kay came along, and we made a business decision in our household that I would become a stay-at-home mom, which cut our income literally in half. Actually, I was making just a little bit more than him. So it was a big decision for us, but it was a great one. So I came home, and Dave started really prospering in his job, and life was just wonderful. And until that moment when he really realized the kids are growing up and it's time for me to start looking for something to do. So I thought, what can I do part-time? Just something to bring in some extra money. And I started looking around, and school started, and I thought, well, I could substitute teach. And after they put me in 8th grade music class, for one day, I'm like, wow, I marched down to the principal's office at the end of that day and said, this is not worth $50. I had the worst headache. Please take me off the list. So I knew that's not what I wanted to do. And I do like, I teach everyone today, I make a list of what do I want? What do I want this job to look like? And what do I want my day to look like with this job in it? Because I was living a really great day every day with the kids, being that stay-at-home mom, being able to participate in their school activities, be a part of that, as well as after-school activities, and just be with them, be able to put them on the bus and get them off and be there for them when they get off that school bus. That was really important to me, and I wanted to be able to keep that. So I made a perfect day, and I'd love to share that with you, what that day looked like. And basically it starts out, I'm able to get up and when the alarm goes off for the kids and start getting them ready for school leisurely, not in a hurry, not rushing out the door. I have a daughter that if the line on her socks didn't line up just right across her toe, she would implode. And it was always like right when the bus was coming. So we'd have to start all over. And I wanted to be able to handle those particular circumstances if they showed themselves in the morning. And they like to pack lunches, so we like to pack their lunch and then take them up to the bus stop. I enjoyed that, and I wanted to be able to still do that. That's how they were being raised. So that was very important to me. And it was also very important to Dave. So I thought, okay, I want to get up in the morning, get up leisurely, take the kids to school, walk them to the school bus, and then come home. And I love coffee. I love to have a great cup of coffee, and I like to get my mind right in the morning. So typically I would read something that was very inspiring, a particular book, something, a scripture out of the Bible, just something to get my mind right. And after that, if you don't go work out, you usually don't get that done. So I wanted to go work out. That was a big part of my life at that point. And I'd go to the gym and then get home. Of course, you've got to take a shower. And then by then it's lunchtime. And I know this day is sounding like, where's the work? But this is what I was envisioning. And I thought, well, you want to call up the girlfriends and who were also stay-at-home moms. Maybe there was something to do activity-wise for PTA or whatever, or just have a great girl lunch. And then you never know after that what you might need, like a mani-pedi, or even I jokingly say a psychiatric visit, because you are raising kids after all. And then it's 3:00. The kids start to come home from school, and you want to be at that bus stop. And so I'd walk up to the bus stop, wait for them to get off the bus, and bring them in the house. And of course, they're starving, so I always made great snacks for them, very healthy. And they would tell me about their day, and that's important. I found if I wasn't there, they kind of lost what happened that day, but it was important to them. So I'd let them share that with me. And then we might do some homework or go outside and play. That was a big part of it too. I loved being outside with them. And that's pretty much the whole day as you head into the night, which is then making dinner. It might be after school activities. And then there's bath time, more homework perhaps, bedtime. And then of course, Big Daddy needs about 30 minutes. And that was pretty much my day. And that's what I wrote out. That's how I wanted a day to be. And somewhere within all of that, being able to work from home. And I didn't know if that was possible. I didn't know about any industry that would give me that kind of flexibility to work spare time, part-time. So I started looking in the paper. That's back in the day when you did have your want ads, and we didn't have Google or Yahoo, or you could search a job. And of course, I was well networked. We were very connected in our community. Dave and I were born and raised in the same area, so we knew a lot of people. And I just started asking around, and Dave did a lot of entertaining, and we were always taking clients out to dinner, to lunch, or perhaps to a show. And on this particular evening, we were going to drive a couple hours. We're going to take one of his best clients out to dinner, him and his wife. And so we drove that distance and sat down and had a great dinner with them. And I jokingly went through my day of what a perfect day would look like in my life, the one I just described, to them. And we all had a big laugh. Everybody laughed but Dave, because he's still saying the job word. And a couple of weeks later, that client called me. Now, he was a multimillionaire in that industry of construction. And he called on a random day and said, hey, there's an opportunity meeting at a local college near you. Why don't you go take a listen? And you just got to show up. It's in a classroom. There's going to be somebody there doing a business presentation. And it might fit that day that you were telling us about. And I'm like, what the heck is this? I'd never been invited to an opportunity meeting. And why was he even interested? Because he said he was so interested in it that he actually joined. And I didn't know what that meant either. It really, really sounded weird. And the more questions I asked him, the less he told me. He said, I just want you to go. And it's next Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just going to tell him I'm going to go. So I told him I was going to go. And so that next Wednesday morning, he called and said, what did you think? And I'd already forgotten about it because I said, about what? And he said, about that opportunity meeting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about it. But I didn't tell him that. I just made up another excuse because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And I think a lot of our prospects do that to us. They just don't want to hurt our feelings. So they tell us they're going to go with no intention whatsoever of going or even taking a look at it. And I learned a valuable lesson then because this is what he told me. He said, I'm going to call you on Monday and remind you of the meeting on Tuesday. And then I'll call you the following Wednesday to see what you thought. And I'm going to do that every week until you go. And so he was pretty persistent in that conversation. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go. So I went in and I told Dave, I said, honey, you're going to have to go with me because this is your client after all. And it's about 20 minutes from where we live, and we don't typically go in that area very often, and there's a great restaurant there, so let's just make it date night, and we'll go to this meeting and suffer through it, and then after that, we'll go out and have a great dinner, and that's what we did. We actually showed up a little bit before 7, and as we're going up the stairs to this classroom, I'll never forget when we looked up, there was our next door neighbor, Larry, who'd lived beside of us for many, many years. And he was as shocked to see me as I was to see him. And I'm like, wonder why he's here. So as we get up the stairs going into the classroom, he said, wow, who invited you? And I told him who it was. He lived a couple hours away. And he was very surprised. And I didn't understand that for a while. But later I figured it out that, you know, he missed out on a great opportunity because he prejudged us and didn't think we might be interested in that meeting. So we go in and we sat down and in a classroom seat, there was a gentleman up front with one of those big old-fashioned flip charts, and it was pre-printed. It had a business presentation on it, and he was just way too excited about it. He was bouncing all around, just really animated about what he had to offer. And I thought, this is kind of goofy. But I look around the room and I realize I'm the only woman here. And I thought, well, this might be interesting. It might be fun since I'm the only one here that's female. Wonder what this is all about. And he starts going through the business presentation and he gets to a page on residual income. Up to that moment, I was not paying attention. My arms were crossed. I was thinking about dinner. I was hoping the sitter was helping the kids do their homework, get to bed. All these thoughts were going through my mind, everything but any interest. But when he got to that page and he started walking through the residual income that could be made with this opportunity, I kind of went from not listening to sitting bolt upright in my chair because I understood that concept just through my experience selling IBM computers, because I would sell a computer. It might take me 6 months to a year to sell that computer. And then once that sale was over, that was it. There was no more income to be generated from that sale. I would have to start all over again, obviously, the next day, the next week, the next month, every time I closed out a sale. But there was a service contract on every single one of those, and they were renewed annually. I always wanted to get paid on those, and they would never do that. I thought, wow, if I could just get paid every year off of something I sold once, that would be really cool. And so what he was saying is you can get paid every single month on all the activity that you create once as those customers continue to purchase. And that really got my attention. And then he said something else that I'll never forget. He goes, and we will help you. And that's when my hand shot up. Nobody had asked a question up until then. But I'm like, why would you help me? Because I remember being in sales and no one would help us. We were out there on our own. Even our managers sometimes would do things that would hurt our territory. He might inflict some pain there by adding someone else in there and take away. I never really felt like I got help, the type of help that I could have used. So that was really interesting to me, that the fact that I could work spare time, part-time, my own time, build residual income, and then they would get paid to help me, and I could get paid to help others. And that sounded really interesting to me. So we went to dinner that night, Dave and I could not think of anything else but that opportunity. It was imprinted on my brain. I couldn't even sleep that night. I woke up very, very early thinking about it, dreaming about it, wondering if that could fit that day for me. And after I put the kids on the bus, worked out, I went to the library and I checked out a couple books on that industry. It was direct sales, network marketing, multi-level marketing, whatever you want to call it, and found that it was a viable business opportunity, that others had joined companies very similar to this one, and they had built a tremendous income from it. And, basically how to get started. But there was also still some fear in me. Could I possibly do it? And I've always had a big reluctance in asking people for help, even though I thought it was intriguing if they would help me. I've always been someone that just felt like they had to do it on their own. So I'm still very confused by it. Still not understanding if I could possibly do it. Almost a big, overwhelming fear set in. And I put it off for months. My potential sponsor kept calling and saying, when are you going to get started? When are you going to get started? And Dave kept saying, you need to get a job. You need to get a job. So everything was kind of colliding together. And what I decided in the fall of that year, I took almost $600 out of our account, which we did not have to spare. And I joined that opportunity and then sat there in fear for 6 entire months of doing nothing, not even asking anyone if they wanted to become a customer or a potential distributor with me, because I was just living in a state of, could I do it? What would people think? What if I can't answer a question? What if this is really not real? What if the company goes under? I mean, just all these really crazy things were going through my mind. And my sponsor at that time, he was just really good about, when are you going to get started? You're so connected to everybody. You don't have any fear. You know everybody. You walk in a room, and by the end of it, you've met everyone. You've got such a big, bold personality. I was always, when I was selling computers, I always won the trips. If there was a fountain pen they were giving away, I was going to win that. So I knew I had it in me. I just don't know what overcame me. And then 6 months later, he called one day and said, look, the number one money earner is going to be at a meeting a couple hours away from you. And he's a former teacher just like you. He's actually your age. And he's the number one money earner. He's going to be speaking, and I really think that you should go. I think this might be the catalyst to get you started. And so I went. It was a Tuesday night. I got in the car by myself because, once again, I had not told anybody I had joined. There was no one to go with me. Dave was going to stay back and keep the kids. So I drove the 2 hours, and I went to that meeting. I sat very close to the back of the room in case I thought, well, this might not be what I want, and I might walk out. But I'm telling you, I was intrigued. He was much more Southern than me speaking. He had a very similar background. He had 2 kids, a wife that he'd been married to as long as I'd been married to Dave. He was my age. Here's the difference. He was making a 6-figure monthly income, 6 figures a month. And I was making nothing because I was living in such a state of fear. And he got started while teaching. He had asked over 100 of his peers within that school and outside of that school if they would be interested, and all of them said no, but he kept going and going and going. He didn't let anything stop him. His dream was really, really big and very bold, and he went after it. And at the end of that meeting, I stood in line, as so many others did. I was one of the last ones there. And as I got up there and I shook his hand and started talking to him, all of these reasons started coming out of my mouth, just almost like word vomit on him about all the reasons why I hadn't started. And he wasn't buying it. He took a step back. He put his hands on his hips, and he just looked me straight in the eyes, and he said, you know what? You're just too prissy for this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did he just call me out? Nobody ever really talked to me like that, but it stung in such a way that it became the truth to me. He was so right. I thought I was too good for it. And here I am back in Virginia, because this was in North Carolina, suffering. My husband is asking me to get a job. We need the extra money. And all I'm worried about is what everybody's going to think, or if I can't answer a question, which I knew I could eventually get the answer. And all the way home, I cried, really, really, that deep, profound cry of, gosh, I just got to do this. And my why came up even bolder, more strong. And the next day, I always jokingly say this, but in reality, it was truth for me. I put on the biggest, whitest, thickest pair of panties I could, and I started making phone calls. I got one of those big old, ugly, huge flip charts, and I had Dave ask people too, and I got out there and got to work. And the answers started coming to the questions. People started listening to me. Most of them said no. But some said yes, and I started moving in the right direction. My confidence grew each and every day. As the weeks and the months went by, my check grew too. And I'll never forget, my first check was $15.78. And Dave said, why don't I quit my job and we both go full-time, which was a joke. I knew it was, but I worked very hard for that $15.78. And then the very next month, it grew to $203. The third month, it was $748. And the fourth month, I hit my goal of reaching $1,000 a month. And this was residual income. And I loved every minute of it. And my check just kept growing and growing and growing to the point of a tremendous income was coming in. And it just wouldn't stop. And I just kept going and learning and growing. And I fell in love with the industry because of what it gave to us and our family. And I've been in it ever since. And that was 1994. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Pam Sowder Podcast. Be sure to check out my website at pamsowder.com. There you can get inspired, listen to more podcasts, read and submit Ask Pam questions that could be featured on an upcoming podcast episode. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, much love and appreciation.